Some people don't wake up and ask, "What do I want today?" They wake up and ask, "How am I doing compared to everyone else?" If you constantly compare yourself to others, you probably don't even notice when it happens anymore. It's automatic. You scroll, you look, you measure. Their life, their body, their success, their confidence, their relationships. And then, without meaning to, you look back at yourself and feel smaller, behind, late, incomplete. Not because you are, but because comparison has quietly become your lens. People who'll compare themselves to everyone aren't shallow. They're searching for reassurance, for direction, for proof that they're okay, that they're not falling behind in some invisible race they never agreed to join. Comparison is the mind's way of trying to understand its place in the world. Your brain is wired to observe others, to learn, to mirror, to adapt. But when that natural instinct gets tangled with insecurity, trauma, or conditional love, it becomes something else. It becomes self-erasure. Most chronic comparers didn't grow up feeling emotionally secure. Somewhere in your story, love felt earned. Attention felt competitive. Validation felt scarce. So your brain learned, to be safe, you must be better. Or at least, it's not worse. And that belief can shape an entire life. You don't just see people, you measure yourself against them. You don't just admire, you internalize. You don't just notice, you judge. Not them. Yourself. You might look at someone's success and feel inspired for 2 seconds, then crushed for 2 hours. You might look at someone's confidence and wonder why you don't feel like that. You might look at someone's relationships and ask, "What's wrong with you?" And what hurts the most is that no matter how far you go, there's always someone ahead of you. Always, so you never feel like you've arrived. Comparison creates a moving finish line. You might reach a goal and feel proud briefly, but then your mind finds someone doing more, being more, having more. And suddenly, your achievement feels small. That's not ambition. That's emotional insecurity wearing a productivity mask. People who compare themselves a lot often feel like they're being watched even when they're not. You feel like your life is on display, like your worth is visible, like people can see your progress and judge. It's so you overthink your pace. You rush things. You hide things. You exaggerate things. You downplay things. You live with an audience in your head, and that audience is harsh. You might think comparison motivates you, but real motivation doesn't feel like anxiety. It doesn't feel like shame. It doesn't feel like panic. Comparison doesn't push you forward. It pulls you apart. It makes you question your timeline, your choices, your identity, your worth. It convinces you that you're late. Even when you're right on time, it tells you that you should be more. Even when you're already enough. And the scariest part, you start seeing your own life as inferior by default, not because it is, but because you're always viewing it next to someone else's highlight reel. People who compare themselves often struggle with a deep fear of being insignificant, of being forgettable, of being average. Not because average is bad, but because they were taught that average means invisible. So they try to stand out, not for joy, but for safety. You might feel restless, like you can't settle, like there's always something else you should be doing, becoming, achieving, fixing, improving, and you're tired, but you don't know how to stop. Because stopping means facing the fear. What if I'm not enough as I am? Comparison is a coping mechanism. It gives your brain something to do with. It's uncertainty. It gives you a false sense of control. If I know where I stand, maybe I can fix myself. But that logic is broken because human worth is not measurable. And yet, you try. You turn your life into numbers, achievements, milestones, labels, timelines, and when you don't match someone else's pace, you feel defective. But you were never supposed to live on the same clock as everyone else. Some people bloom early. Some bloom late. Some bloom quietly, some bloom wildly. That doesn't make one more real than the other, but comparison tells you it. Does it tells you that louder is better, faster is better, more is better, and slowly. You stop listening to your own rhythm. You live according to someone else's tempo. People who compare themselves often lose their sense of identity. You start asking, who should I be? Instead of, who am I? You borrow dreams, borrow standards, borrow definitions of success, and then wonder why your life feels wrong. You might feel disconnected from your own desires because you don't know what. You want only what looks impressive, and that creates a quiet kind of emptiness, because a life that looks good but feels wrong will always hurt you. Might think you're comparing your life, but you're really comparing your insides to other people's outsides, and that will never be fair. You see your doubts, they show their victories. You see your fear, they show their confidence. You see your confusion, they show their clarity. You're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel, and your brain doesn't know the difference, so it believes you're losing. People who compare themselves often struggle with self-trust. You doubt your choices, your pace, your instincts. You second-guess everything, because if everyone else seems to be doing something different, maybe you're wrong, but difference does not mean failure. It means individuality, and individuality is uncomfortable because there's no map. Comparison gives you a map, but it's someone else's, and following it will never lead you home. You don't compare because you're insecure. You compare because you care. You want to do life right. You want to matter. You want to feel like you're not wasting your existence, and that's deeply human. But comparison distorts that desire. It turns growth into pressure, learning into shame, becoming into panic. It makes you feel like you're always late to your own life. But you're not late. You're just on a different road, and that road has different scenery, different lessons, different timing, and it's not inferior. It's yours. Healing doesn't mean never comparing again. It means catching yourself and asking, why am I doing this? Am I looking for inspiration or validation? Am I learning or punishing myself? Am I curious or cruel? Because the way you talk to yourself matters, and comparison often becomes a form of self-harm. That looks productive? You deserve a relationship with yourself that isn't based on competition. You deserve to grow without hating. Where you are, you deserve to evolve without despising. Who you've been, you are not a draft version of someone else. You are a finished version of you still unfolding, and unfolding doesn't mean lacking. It means living. You don't need to win it. Life, you just need to live it. Not faster, not louder, not better, but truer. So ask yourself this. If I stopped measuring my life against others, what would I finally listen to? What would I want? What would I choose? What would feel right? Because your life is not a comparison chart. It's a story, and no two stories are meant to be the same. You don't need to look like anyone else to be real. You don't need to match anyone's pace to be worthy. You don't need to prove anything to exist. You already do, and that is enough. So maybe today, instead of asking, am I ahead or behind? Ask something gentler. Am I growing? Am I learning? Am I being honest with myself? Because growth doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it looks quiet, and quiet growth still counts. You don't need to outrun anyone. You just need to stop running from yourself. And when you do, you might finally realize you were never behind. You were just becoming.